This podcast is not operated by an organization, but is an independent solo project run by me. It costs me considerable time and money to make Copytraders Club, and you can ease that pain by making a small $3 per month contribution at patreon.com/copytradersclub. I've kept the price deliberately low to make it an easier yes, even if you have not previously supported anything in this way. Maybe this time it's different. It only takes 2 minutes to sign up and become an official supporter of Copytraders Club. Patreon.com/copytradersclub. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support. Copytraders Club, where you can learn how to make better decisions and more money copy trading. I'm Gavin McCauley, my name and username on eToro. Today, we talk to a PI who is a groundbreaking scientist with an impressive CV and a portfolio with a mission. Here we go. Season 2, Episode 12 of the Copytraders Club podcast, and, as always, my aim as an eToro enthusiast and copy trader is to demystify this new and uncharted world of copy trading, understand what are the pitfalls and best practices, and how ultimately to succeed as a copy trader. In chats like today's, the aim is to answer all your questions about this popular investor and reveal more about them than anywhere else, so you can assess whether they might suit you. In this episode, we talk to Simone Rizzetto, whose job, startup, and investments all reflect his passions and goals. La limousine è arrivata. Simone, ciao, benvenuto nel Copytraders Club.
Ciao Gav, come va?
Tutto bene, tutto bene.
Ottimo.
Tutto bene here at Copytraders Club because Simone's in town. I know you know that in order to get into the Copytraders Club, you've got to answer a series of quickfire questions to clear security. Pronto?
Ready, let's go.
Username on eToro.
Simone Rizzetto 88,
Date you joined eToro.
February 2019,
Date you became a popular investor.
about January 2020,
Year of birth.
1988,
Place of residence.
Singapore,
Profession.
scientist.
Briefly state what you aim to achieve on eToro.
I guess I would like to become financially independent so I can focus more on the things I like to do.
Name one of your investing heroes.
So, given that I don't come from a financial background, I don't really have an investing hero, but I learn a lot of things from some online classes and seminars with a professor whose name is Andrew Lowe. He's an MIT professor in finance.
Name one of your favorite investing books.
I think the most useful investing book I read in my life was the books of probability and statistics I had to study during my bachelor.
That completes the formalities. Let's proceed into the VIP section here at the clubhouse. Simone, the magnificent Copy Traders Lounge awaits you. Simone Rizzetto, aka Simone Rizzetto 88. Are you ready for this magical transition?
Yes, I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, Simone, take a seat now here in the magnificent surroundings of the Copy Traders Lounge. What do you make of it?
It's pretty cool here, comfortable. So far it's comfortable. Let's see how it's going to be when we get to the hot questions.
So, Simone, you're part of the eToro Popular Investor Quarterly Forums that I see on YouTube, organized by Stephen Budgeon.
Yes, I am. We are like 4 or 5 people that now we periodically start to meet together, mostly online, despite we all live in the same city, a few kilometers away from each other. But, COVID, even when you are in the same cities, like you are thousands of kilometers away from each other. But now that restrictions are being leased, we will have the chance to meet again in person. So hopefully there will be more of these Singapore forum episodes for the popular investors.
Yeah, and if I call you Simeone at all by mistake, it's because that's what Stephen used to call you all the time.
Yeah, because he likes football. So, and there is Simeone that is a football player and coach. So, yeah, that's why. But that's okay, not a problem.
Okay, well, I'll try and get it right. I always approach the subject of how I came across the guest, and that's the answer. It was from those forums, is where I first saw you. So, you're from Italy. Whereabouts in Italy?
I'm from the north, close to the border with Austria and Switzerland. So I live in the Alps. It's the Dolomite regions. I don't know if you ever been somewhere nearby there. Yes, so different climate compared to Singapore.
Sure. And let me fill in a bit of background about you for the listener. Having studied in Italy and the Netherlands, you worked as a Microsoft researcher in Italy using your computer science master's degree, and then moved to Sydney, Australia, working in bioinformatics and immunology, having also completed a medical sciences PhD. You're now at the Genome Institute of Singapore as a researcher in immuno-oncology, as well as a startup founder and entrepreneur. Is that all correct?
Yes, all correct. Precise.
So you're a very highly educated individual, and your professional background is evidenced in your investing in the biotech and pharma companies involved in immunotherapy. So we're going to talk about that a lot more later. For now, let's just stick to the getting to know you kind of stuff.
Okay.
You've also won a number of academic awards. So I'm a bit worried that I won't be able to keep up with your brilliant mind.
No, it's not that brilliant. It's just, I like doing a lot of things. That's what you see in my CV, but it's not things that are too difficult for actually. It's more about getting there and starts doing things, but nothing's brilliant.
Well, it's a very impressive CV. Why don't you tell us then a little bit about Cytocast, your startup, which runs computer simulations on therapies to help drug development and to help patients in the way they're treated?
Yes. So this is startups I founded with some of my colleagues from the Microsoft research. We basically were working together in creating a software that can simulate the effect of the drugs on a human cell. And then was purely an academics project. But then, we all left Microsoft Research. I went to do my PhD in Australia. We remain in contact. We continued the developments on the side as a side project. And then once I finished my PhD, we decided to try to build a company out of that and see where we can go. It's still very early stage. We are still in the process of completely validating our software. For now, we got some small investments, and with that one, we could basically get started and let's see where we can get.
Fantastic. Well, I saw that you're at the seed investment stage. So if any of those black star PIs who are out there earning far more money than they deserve, they're welcome to get in touch.
Yeah, I will be happy to have an angel investor.
Or maybe even eToro could think about doing something more useful than throwing vast sums of money at Premier League football clubs.
If somebody from eToro is listening, please contact me.
All right, very good. Okay, let's get to know you a little bit more, Simone, when I ask this question. What would someone who knows you well say is the most eccentric thing about you?
So I'm not really an eccentric person. So I don't really do weird things and mostly try to stay away from the center of the attentions. So I'm definitively not like Elon Musk. The opposite.
Okay. All right. Let's have a question from the art of people. Simone, can you give me a number between 1 and 10?
7.
If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing and why?
It's a really difficult question for me to answer because I really always wanted to be a scientist. So I can't really imagine what other things I could have done. Probably I would have been still somehow related to computer science, software developers, something like that. But yeah, was like not really, what I really want to do is this one. So it's hard to find something else I would like to do.
Well, that's the perfect answer, isn't it? That you're doing exactly what you want to do and you can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah, exactly. And even, a lot of people are here for financial freedom when they started investing. They want to be independent and so on. Yes, I want the same, but that will just, in a way, to give me more time to focus more on my research rather than, just go to Bali and live my life.
Right, Simone, let's have a look at your profile now on eToro and let's get the ball rolling. If I ask you to read paragraphs 2 and 3 from your bio.
Long-term investments in tech and healthcare, but I also consider other opportunities. A description of my strategy is pinned in my feed. I apply eToro for data analysis to balance and mitigate the risk of my portfolio. I'm expecting 20% annual return and significantly outperform the S&P 500. Since I joined eToro, my 12 months average is about 20% and about the S&P 500.
Okay, so Simone, we're getting the picture of a scientist deeply involved in the world of immuno-oncology and investing to some extent along those lines. At least that's certainly one of the main areas of focus of your portfolio, right?
Yes, correct.
Is now the time to talk about this? Okay. Immunotherapy was a word that I used quite a lot last year. Out of the blue, my very healthy and youthful mum got a diagnosis in the springtime of a very rare form of cancer, mucosal melanoma.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And there's very little data on it because so few people are diagnosed with it. Like 5 or 6 people in the US every year or something. But the data we did have gave us very little cause for hope, given how aggressive this is known to be. And the doctors recommended immunotherapy for, they were saying like a year, possibly 2, as a means of slowing it down, since slowing it down was the best we could hope for. And then after the very first immunotherapy session, the next scan shocked the doctors with the rate of spread. Didn't shock us so much. We could see what was happening. But after that scan, there was no further immunotherapy. It was a case of just go home and run down the clock, try and enjoy what time was left. And she died in November. And she was 76, full of life, and then gone in the blink of an eye, and we were powerless to stop it. So, obviously, you hear stories like this all the time, I'm sure.
Yes.
In your field of work. And so immunotherapy, let's talk about that. Yeah, everyone seems to be very positive about the future of immunotherapy. Various forms of it have been achieving great results against certain types of cancers. So tell us about your involvement with that area of study.
So first of all, I'm very sorry to hear about your story. It's very sad. And it is right. So immunotherapy is still at the very beginning. We are still trying to understand where it's working, where it's not working. There are certain cancer types which this looks working better than the others. There are some patients that are responding better than the others. And the causes can be multiple. So we are still at the very beginning to understand this. Immunotherapy is not just a single therapy. There are like many different type of immunotherapies. They varies also a lot based on the, between solid tumors and like melanoma, like one you mentioned, or blood cell malignancies like leukemia. And you can have different type of therapies. And the one I mostly focus on are basically for solid tumor. So, but it's slightly different from the one that probably was given to your mom. So likely the one that your mom received is a PD-1. It's called a PD-1 blockade. It's basically an immunotherapy that blocks cancer cells from deactivating immune cells. So we know that immune cells can fight cancer cells and kill them. But sometimes cancer can evolve and develop a mechanism to shut down immune cells and prevent them from attacking. So one of the best inventions in immunotherapy was indeed developing an antibodies that could block the interaction between cancer cells and immune cells and block basically the brake that cancer cells was using to stop immune cells from attacking. What I'm mostly focusing on right now is also antibodies, but these antibodies are attacking directly cancer cells instead of engaging or like modulating the engagement between immune cells and cancer cells. These antibodies are designed to attack a solid tumor and can be modified to deliver, for instance, a chemotherapy drugs directly to the cancer cells. So what I'm working on right now, and I'm also investing in some of this company, are antibodies that carries a very toxic compound. And then these antibodies are very specific for cancer cells. Obviously, cancer cell can vary a lot between different cancer types, but these are specific for like one cancer types only. And they basically travel in the body until they find the cells for which they are specific. And then they attach to that cancer cells. And then cancer cells will eat the antibody together with the toxic compound and it will die. And mostly this therapy has been used for breast cancer, a specific subtype of breast cancer. And they have been very effective. As if we are talking about investing, so AstraZeneca, for instance, which is one of the company in my portfolio, is developing a very good antibodies for breast cancer, for this specific subtype of breast cancer, with very high success rate. I think they like triplicate or quadruplicate. I don't remember the exact number. I should check. But it was a very high performance on a 2-year survival, much higher than the previous therapies.
Well, it's very interesting to talk to someone who's investing in something that they're so involved in, first of all, and secondly, something that's so patently for the good of humankind, I hope it's not too personal a question if I ask you, Simone, if your interest comes from any personal experience yourself.
No. Okay, I can tell you a bit why I got interested in that, how I basically, from a computer scientist, I basically became more of a biologist. Yes, when I started computer science, my undergrad in computer science, I always wanted to try to use computer science to cure people or like improve people's life more than developing the next killer app or something like that. So when I learned about bioinformatics, I thought that was the directions that I should have followed. And from that moment, I started to learn more and more about biology and how computer science and data analysis can be used to develop new therapies. So it's truly personal interest. I was lucky that it was not a personal story.
The reason I ask that is because, well, very few guests on Copytraders Club are as old as me. They're always younger. There's only been one guy who's older than me. And very few guests on Copytraders Club have less hair than I do, you know?
Yes.
But I think you win that prize. So that's sort of what I was getting at, if it's not too personal a question.
No, you can ask her. It is not anything related to cancer. It's a different disease. It's autoimmune disease. It's alopecia. So it's completely different. It's not, except that I don't have hair. It doesn't cause me any damage.
Okay. And mine's just getting old and being bald.
Yeah. I save money on hairdressing.
Right. I haven't been to the hairdressers for decades.
Not bad to save more money for investing. I can buy more Bitcoin.
Okay, so back to investing. Let's have a look at your overall results. In the 11 months of 2019, the year you started, 23% approximately. 2020, 46.5%. 2021, 10.5%. 2022 so far, minus 14%. So you're not immune to the problems that other PIs are experiencing in the market right now.
Yes, right. I'm not, and I'm not even trying to hedge against this downturn, because also what we have seen from the pandemic, I know that it's risky, and a lot of people do not recommend this, but I really like the idea of buying the dip if you are here for the long term. So right now, the prices are going down. I see very good opportunities to buy for the long term. I'm very worried if I will be investing in companies that maybe are doing well right now, but I'm not sure about their performance in the long term. I may be investing in oil companies right now, and maybe I can start to have some short-term returns, but I will not have the knowledge to know when to stop, when to close my positions in that investment. So for me, it's really a good opportunity to positions for future profits.
Let's have a look at your risk score. Normally your risk score is 4, both max and average, over the past year. However, in the last few months, again, like many, it has risen to 6. Copier numbers and assets under management. Copier number is currently 1,376. And I always make an effort to describe the graph, which is, I don't know, the graphs are a bit funny these days, but it shows
A roller coaster.
Yes, it's a roller coaster. There's a steep decline, and then it bottoms out, and then a very steep rise, followed by another decline. So what does that tell us?
First of all, the amount of copy and assets under management, I believe it's a kind of amplification of your performance. So when you are doing well, there will be a lot of copiers coming in, even like more than what your performance are doing. Then when you starts to lose a bit of money, then everybody will run out. So you will see larger movement in the number of copiers compared to the performance. So that's a little bit the nature of copy trading. There are things that PIs probably can do to try to mitigate this problem a little bit. Definitely engaging with the copiers and explaining the strategy. These are all things that can help. So this is a bit of the nature of eToro in general, and also tells that, yes, this has been very volatile month, where we have seen many different factors coming in that we didn't know before, like the war in Ukraine. That definitely was some things we didn't needed, increase the volatilities more, and that will exacerbate the number of copiers that are living.
As you mentioned, it looks a bit like a roller coaster, your graph. What was the high point? What was the maximum number of copiers you had?
I remember my assets under management was like 2.5 million. Now it's more about 1.5 or a bit less. So the assets under management went down by almost 50%.
So did you have like as many as 3,000 copiers ever?
There was probably around, I think it's around 2,000, something like that, yes.
Trades per week and average holding time? Trades per week, 3.77. Average holding time, 9.5 months. So you've already mentioned you're a long-term kind of guy. That tells that story also, I suppose.
Yes, actually, okay, you may think that 9.5 months is longer, but I don't think it's long. I think it can be a lot longer. And the reason why I have such a long position is because, as we mentioned before, I mostly invest in biotech companies. I've invested tech and biotechs, but especially for biotech companies, the process of innovation, the process of developing new drugs, it's very long. So during COVID, we have seen an exception. We were able to develop a new vaccine in matters of months, but that's because COVID is a different disease from what usually people are trying to target in the clinics. So like when we are trying to develop a new drugs for cancer, the time for testing for the clinical trials are usually about 5 years. So if you are investing, if you have find a stock that is developing a new drugs for cancer and is still in early phase, it will still takes 5 years before you will see the profit out of that. So 9.5 months is short.
Sure. It's short in the great scheme of things when talking of investing. But as far as that stat on eToro goes, it's relatively long compared to other PIs. But as we know, there's all sorts of factors that go into that stat. You know, you have to balance your portfolio and you buy and sell and all sorts of things.
Yes, right. I do invest in companies, for instance, for the healthcare market and biotech market. I invest in companies that have assets at different stage of development. So some of them may get to the market in a year time, another will take 2 years, and others will take 5 years. So I have a bit of everything in my portfolio, but still, even in the best cases, it will still take a year before you will see any profit.
Okay, let's talk about communication a little bit. As I mentioned at the start, I've seen you on those YouTube videos with multiple other PIs. How frequently do you post on eToro?
My frequency oscillates quite a lot. I think now it's every second week. I try every second week. There were periods like I think you know about the exams that popular investor had to do.
Yes.
So during that time, I think I was writing a little bit less because most of my free time I was spent studying for that course.
Did you find that difficult?
Not difficult, but it's really a lot of contents that you have to memorize. You need to spend the time, read the book, do the exercise, especially if you don't have a background in finance.
Well, how about the language? Is your English is good enough for that not to be a problem?
I don't think so. Yeah, English is quite simple to understand, especially the questions, the exams, I didn't have any troubles with that.
Well, for a guy who's got a CV like yours, it doesn't surprise me.
There are a lot of people who did better than me. So
Well, you only have to pass, don't you?
yes, yeah, right.
You've also got a LinkedIn profile, and you've got a couple of websites. There's an investing Simone Rizzetto website and also a Simone Rizzetto website.
Yes.
There's quite a lot of material, which was helpful for me to research you. And I want to pull you up on one article you wrote, which I thought was very interesting. It's called "You Shouldn't Invest More Than $70,000 in the Stock Market."
Yeah.
The idea being that continuing to invest, even after many years, will have a decreasing impact on growth. The ideal thing to do, you posit, is to invest somewhere around 70,000 over the first 7 years and then stop adding. Use other funds for different purposes. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly what I want, the message that I want to give. I'm glad that somebody read it. I thought that nobody was going to read it. And I'm actually glad that somebody understood what was my message. So I'm very happy that it was clear to you. And I like to try to make some predictions on how much I should invest, when I can retire, and this kind of things. And what I found out that based on my average salary, and okay, this will change from person to person. It depends by how much they can afford to invest every year in the stock market. But I assume that it will be hard for somebody to invest more than 10, 15K every year. So, and it also depends by the performance that on average you have. Let's say if you reach 100K, your portfolio is $100K, and your performance are 20%, then you make 20K every year. Maybe from your salary, you can save money and invest an additional 10K, and you will reach 130K portfolio instead of 120. But on the long term, this will have like a smaller impact because at the end of the day, your performance will outweigh the amount of money you can put in the market once you reach that critical point, which is around 100K, assuming that you can afford like to put 10 to 15K in the market every year. So I don't see the point in trying to squeeze more money out of your lifestyle just to reach your financial goals maybe 1 year earlier than what you would have done without investing that money. And maybe you can just enjoy your life more and spend your money somewhere else instead of, trying to get to your retirement age just a couple of years earlier.
Yeah, it's a very interesting message because normally you hear just keep adding, add this amount, add this amount. So for you to put a cap on it, this is the optimal approach in many ways. So, and it's also a good message for your copiers. Just copy me for 7 years with 70,000. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, don't put more than 70,000 in my copy.
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Copytraders Club.
Copytraders Club.
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy? Copytraders Club.
Copytraders Club.
Okay, let's have a deeper dive now into your portfolio, Simone. Let me give a broad brush description of your portfolio positions. Asset class allocation is approximately stocks 65%, ETFs 32%, crypto 3%, currently with a zero cash balance, to which we shall return in a moment. You've got 63 positions, 39 stocks, 20 ETFs, and 4 cryptos. My first reaction to that is, that's a lot of ETFs.
Right. And I'm happy to explain that. So when I started, to create my portfolio, I mostly focused on individual stocks. And that's what I did for probably the first 2 years, even after I became a popular investor. But as I was getting more and more copiers, and as also some of my friends were starting to invest in my portfolio, I realized that I was not able to achieve sufficient diversification of my portfolio just by investing in tech and healthcare. So I started to dedicate a larger part of my portfolio into ETFs because I'm not expert in every field. So I can focus on healthcare and tech, but I cannot focus on other markets. For instance, renewable energies. I don't know which stocks are the best, but I still like the technology. I still like the idea of living in a world that we can use renewable energies. So the way I invested in that is by investing in a ETF, like the renewable solar energy ETF. And similarly, I've done the same for the other. Regarding the number of ETFs, that's maybe a little bit of overestimation of the actual number of different stocks and assets I have in my portfolio because I like to diversify also when I invest in the same things. For instance, if I want to invest in the S&P 500 ETFs, there are different ETFs that tracks the S&P 500. So I just copied all of them and I split my amounts in, not all of them, but a few of them. And I split the amount I wanted to invest in the S&P 500 across the different ETFs. And similarly, I've done some things like that also for individual stocks, like Alibaba. It is both in the New York Stock Exchange and Hong Kong Stock Exchange. And there are pros and cons in each of them. So I just wanted to diversify and invested half in the American one and half in the Hong Kong one. So that doubled the amount of assets and stocks I have in my portfolio.
I always look to see how much desynchronization there is between invested and value. With your portfolio, I do see some desync, but as we've said, there are 63 positions. Most of them are small. So even if there is desync, it's not going to change your approach. If you've got 1% of something and the copier has 2% of it.
Yes and no. If it is just in a few stocks, yes, correct. It doesn't affect too much. If it starts to be on half of the stocks, then it could have a bigger impact. But I still try to, once in a while, especially the positions that diverge from the original price, I try to reset them at some point, unless there is some reason of not doing that. For instance, there are very high fees. For instance, in cryptos, if you close it and open it again, that will be a 2.5% fee, which is changing, but at that time was still very high. Yes, I think last time was February last year. I completely closed all my positions and opened them again. So there was no synchronization issue. Now it's been a year since I've done that. I would like to do that soon. It's just that I don't want to do that during a moment of high volatilities because having stocks in a different time zone means that you cannot do that within just a few minutes. You will have to do this over a day. And over a day, we see 2-3% changes in the stock markets during this high volatility period. So I would like to wait for a moment where volatility is lower before I can close and reopen all of my position and resolve all the synchronization issue.
Okay, let's talk about your individual positions. Microsoft is your largest with over 9% of your invested column. Everything else is under 4%, apart from one. Most of them are under 2%. So is your conviction in Microsoft informed by your having worked for them?
No, actually, I work for Microsoft Research, and this is Microsoft Corporation. It's not exactly the same things. Still, money comes from the same place, but slightly different. But I think the reason why I'm investing in Microsoft this much is because their cloud computing is amazing. So I think it's for the future, cloud is taking a larger and larger role. And their recent expansions into cloud gaming, I think it can be worth a lot of money in the future. So yeah, probably heard about recent acquisition of Activision Blizzard and other game development companies. So yeah, I think there will be a lot of people using Azure and the Microsoft Cloud in the future.
Yeah, I see that the cloud is one of your themes. And indeed, in any discussion about portfolio composition, it's made easier by referring to your investing related website, which has a section for portfolio composition,
Yep.
which shows biotech 20%, tech 55%, others 5%, i.e. digital payments and electric vehicles. And then it says balance 10 to 20% not invested will be used in case of market crashes or economic downturns.
Which what happened now.
Okay.
And indeed I used them because, so it was February last year. I had, I think, even a bit more than 20%. We were going through recovery, and at that time, I didn't really know where to put that 20% because most of the stocks looks very expensive. But now things changed, especially in the biotech sector. We have seen investors running away because biotech is not as fancy as it was a year ago. Everybody's moving already into different sectors. But that created opportunities. And I want to use that 20% to position myself to profit from this opportunity.
And one of those would be Illumina, which is now back to pretty much pre-COVID prices.
It is Illumina, but not only that.
Yeah.
Illumina is still done kind of okay, considering that is one of the biotech stocks. Usually biotech stocks dropped even more than what Illumina did. You can just use Arc Genomics as a comparison. Arc Genomics, I think, dropped 65% or something like that. A huge drop. And there is a reason for that. As I mentioned, the biotechs, especially early stage biotechs, needs a lot of years of developments and testing. And they need to put a lot of money into their products before they can reach the market. And that is something that people don't like during period of high inflation and rising interest rates, which is the opposite of what's happening with pharmaceutical companies like Roche, for instance. That one is doing well because pharma companies tends to perform better during inflation period. So it's actually a nice thing to have both large pharmaceutical company that do well in times like this, and the biotech company that have high growth potentials, but they have higher risk. Yeah, 1 year ago it was the opposite. 1 year ago, small biotechs were doing better than larger pharma.
Let's talk about that risk element, because lots of people are scared of investing in smaller, more speculative healthcare kind of plays because it's so binary, whether they get their latest drugs, they get the thumbs up or the thumbs down. It can be the difference between making a fortune or losing your shirt.
Yes.
Are you specifically well placed to interpret their data in such a way that you feel like you're investing in what you know that others don't because of your background?
Yes, sir. So when you say that some things I know that the other don't, depends who you think the other are. So the average investor, probably yes. Experienced biotech investor, maybe we have the same information. But I think because there were a year ago or so, there were a lot of short-term biotech investors that wanted to take profit from the pandemic. And now that we are moving out of it, they are also moving to other sectors. So they are selling their shares to me because I'm buying them. So yeah, I seen to talk about the risk. Yes, the risk is high, and you mentioned one word that I like, binary. You said that it's a binary things. It's either yes or no, which is great because a lot of people invest like large companies, even myself, with so many different things, that many different forces that are going inside that company, many different products. And it requires a team of investors to track all of these products and be able to estimate what could be the risk and the future performance of the stocks. But if you focus on things that are binary, then it's only one variables you have to predict, only one drugs that you have to track. And I can mention a couple of biotech company I have in my portfolio that have only 2 or 3 drugs under development in the clinical trials. I can just, I know what is their stage of development. I know what is the historical success rate of being approved from that stage of development. And I can estimate with simple math what is the chance that they will get to the market. And then I know what is pretty much the average price of drugs in the market, and I can do simple calculations to see if it makes sense to take the risk or not. And if I invest in that, then usually it makes sense for me. It can go wrong because, for instance, I'm investing in small biotech companies that I believe they only have a 30% or so chance of success rate, which means there is higher chance that I will lose almost entirely my investments in that company, which is fine because the idea is if you have like 6, 7, or maybe a bit more of them, and they are all independent from each other, then it's very unlikely that all of them will go wrong. And it's just enough to have 1 or 2 that reach the expected stock price that will pay for all the other failure.
Okay, sticking with the binary subject, why don't you tell us about your best and your worst investments?
Okay. So best investment, is it in eToro or even before eToro?
Up to you.
Okay. So
whichever's the better story.
Okay. I think the better story is this. When I was a PhD student, I was studying, as you mentioned, immunotherapy. And I was reading some research about one type of immunotherapy. It's called a CAR T cells. Basically are immune cells that are modified to attack leukemia cells. And I was very excited about this. And I wanted to do more research into this. I wanted to spend my time as a scientist to work on this. But then one day I thought, I want to do more. I don't just want to invest my time. I also want to invest my money in this. And one of the best immunotherapy company at that time was a small biotech company. I think they had around $2 billion market cap when I invested. It was called Jano Therapeutics. And I invested. I didn't have much money as a PhD student, but the little money I had, I invested part of that into this genotherapeutics company. I think when I started it was 2016, and it had a bit of up and downs. I think one patient died during clinical trial or so, but within 1 year, it was acquired by a larger pharmaceutical companies for like $8 to $9 billion, which was 4 times return over a year, which was decent. Then I followed this company then through all the acquisition, because then I bought this other company was Celgene, which acquired Genotherapeutics. I bought it. Actually, I bought that in eToro as well. And 2019, Bristol Myers Squibb acquired Celgene. So all the CAR-T went up to Bristol Myers Squibb. And I still have Bristol Myers Squibb in my portfolio, and it's still doing decent.
Well, that's an interesting journey. You've been on that ride ever since the early days.
Yes. Yeah. Still not there yet. Yeah, as I mentioned, there is very long time before you can get drugs to the market. Still, I think still needs to get the final approval.
Well, tell us about some time when you got it all terribly wrong. And was that or was that not in your area of expertise, your worst investment?
So one thing that I did a bad investment and I closed it. It was Slack, a company. I don't know, Slack, the communication app.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I invested in that soon after IPO. Then, I kept that position in my portfolio for a while. Then I saw that, I don't know, I compared to Team, which was the competitor from Microsoft. I didn't see much of an improvement of Slack. So I decided to close it in a loss. And then, later on, Slack was acquired by Amazon, I think. So yeah, that was probably bad investments and bad timing combined.
Yeah. I mean, was that a bad decision? Sometimes good decisions end up looking like bad decisions. What did you learn from that experience? What would you do differently?
Um,
Because it sounds to me like you closed it for the right reasons.
yes, true. But then I don't know. One thing is that even if it makes sense to you, it doesn't really means that this is what is the right things to do. There could be many other variables that you are not considering. I don't know, especially if it is in an area that you don't know at best. So I don't know if this Slack work stocks was a good decision or not to close it. It turns out that it was not. It was not too bad, because then I invested my money into something else, which turned out to be still profitable. Maybe not as profitable as it would have been.
Well, let's talk about something that I can see in your portfolio that appears to have done terribly, which is the biggest drop of all.
China.
Well, not just China, but Alibaba Health Information position, which is down a whopping 81.24%.
Yes. Let me just say one thing here. I invested in these stocks before as well. So this is when I just closed and reopened my positions, and I recalibrated everything in my portfolio. It happens that it was the all-time high for the Chinese stocks I think this was January, February 2021.
So I'm struggling to get you to admit to a bad investment here.
It was a bad decision. Just I want to put this note. And if I would have choose which one was the worst, probably I would have say Alibaba more than Alibaba Information Technology. Because when I actually opened that position, it was I think for Alibaba was 200 or something, which from there it dropped like 50%. So that was very bad decision.
Not at all. Alibaba will be back over 450 in a few years. Don't worry about it.
Well, let's say, but I think even if cloud, it could perform well, and I have a bit of experience in cloud technologies and so on. There were still a lot of variables I didn't even consider, which one of that was the political landscape. And probably that was the biggest mistake, to not paying enough attention to what was going on at the political level.
Let's talk about your copiers, Simone. What particular type of copy trader should copy you?
Definitively long-term, people that have a long-term mindset. That is the essential requirement if you want to copy my portfolio.
Even more so because of the nature of the things you invest in than normal? Because everybody says that. Investing at its best is a long-term game, but specifically because of all the things we've discussed.
I think you're right. This is especially true if you invest in biotechs. But it's not the only one. There are in general, innovation takes very long. The thing is, what difference with biotechs is that there is nothing in the middle. So you have no revenues until you reach the approvals, and then you have a spike in the revenue. So for other technologies, even if they will still takes years before reaching complete development, they can still make some revenue along the way.
Right. Interesting. Yes, you mentioned the word innovative. That is really the story of your portfolio. It's kind of all innovation, isn't it?
Mostly, yes. Yeah.
As I scroll down here, tech, biotech, drug trials, a little bit of crypto.
Yes. I do actually own more cryptos than what my portfolio says, but different story.
Uh-huh. Okay, so given what we've just talked about, the nature of your portfolio, what role should you as a PI play in a copier's portfolio? And can you describe what you think the ideal portfolio looks like with you in it?
So, despite I tried to get some diversification with the ETFs that we mentioned at the beginning, I think it's still in a full portfolio, I think I give more exposure to the healthcare and biotech market. Some of the stocks I'm investing in are kind of not unique, but for instance, one of my top position is in Roche, and I checked that earlier. Only 0.5% of eToro's users have a position in Roche. So I think despite my correlation with the S&P 500 is not the lowest, it still give you access to stocks that maybe other PIs don't invest. So that's probably the main things. But still, I think I fit better in a portfolio with PIs that invest in different technologies, and maybe they use different strategies as well. Maybe short term or somebody that is in short position.
So how many PIs do you foresee in the perfect portfolio?
It depends a little bit by person to person. I think around 10 will be an ideal number, especially if you can find 10 investors that uses 10 different strategies. That will be the best.
What PI would you say you know best on a personal level?
Definitely the PIs from Singapore, the one that I met. So fund manager Zach, Amar, Peace. So these are the people I met in person. I had also a few chat with Maverick as well from Malaysia. But yes, I didn't have the chance to meet in person other PIs.
Yeah, I sort of dream of one day jumping on a plane to Singapore and meeting up with all you guys for a sort of round table.
Why not? Now there are no border
the
restrictions.
restrictions are being lifted.
Just come over.
Okay, final question, Simone. And I'm glad I managed to not call you Simeone throughout the conversation. What question do you wish I would have asked you during this chat?
So I think that once I got an interesting question from one of my followers. I'm not sure it was a copier. I don't think it was a copier, just a follower. And he said that he would be bit more interested to copy me if I would focus only into healthcare, for instance, or biotech, and ignore everything else. I think, in his opinion, he wants to use like PIs as just a component of his portfolio. Something that, you just plug in and you build your larger portfolio. I like the idea, but I think the way eToro works now, it requires every single popular investor to achieve full diversification. And also, as I was gaining more copiers, as I mentioned before, I started to have more and more people that were investing only in my portfolio. So because of that, I cannot focus only on one sector.
That's very interesting because, I've seen that other PIs, for example, there's an Irish PI who invests only in real estate investment trusts. That's all he does. So that's his focus. So he zeroes in on that. And, it does sound quite interesting if you were to say, look, I'm a guy this is what I dedicate my life to. It's my main interest. I'm in the business. And, I know what I'm doing in this area. So it's entirely my focus. That would be interesting if it could be done that way. But as you say, risk score and things like that probably make it difficult to be quite so focused.
Yes, I think if I will focus on healthcare only, my risk score will go above 7, which is not allowed. I'm not sure if I want to do that exactly, but it was definitely an interesting feedback that I consider, but not possible for now.
Well, you're a very interesting PI, Simone.
Thank you.
And I'll be following your performance, and we'll see if one or two of those healthcare positions goes interstellar when new drugs are approved. Very interesting. Well, thank you very much for coming to be with us here today at the Copytraders Clubhouse.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be here. I enjoyed our discussion.
And hopefully we will have one in real life one day down on Clark Quay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not far from here.
Okay. Cheers, Simone. All the best.
You too. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Simone Rizzetto there, a man on a mission to improve the world. An interesting contrast at a time when many PIs are seemingly out to make short-term gains from war. Simone links, including to his interesting startup, are in the show notes. That's all from me. See you on Discord and Facebook. Until next time we meet at Copytraders Club, I wish you many happy returns. Obviously, anything you hear in this podcast is for entertainment only, not financial advice. Do your own research. This is just generic chit-chat. We don't know your individual circumstances, etc., and so forth.